And welcome back everyone to the next recap of the FIDE World Rapid Chess Championship. The tournament has concluded yesterday. We have a new world champion who is quite an unexpected one, I would say, with the young Volodar Murzin from Russia, who had quite a surprising win in the end. I think in the penultimate round he won against Pragnananda very surprisingly. He had a lost position, but in the end was able to turn it around. And it was quite a funny conclusion with three Russians being in the top placements. We have Volodar Murzin first place, and then actually I'm not sure, it was Grishuk and Nepomniachtchi. I'm not sure in which order they won it, but that was interesting. And of course an event with a lot of drama, especially considering what happened with Magnus. And now there are all sorts of discussions, many interesting interviews with Hikaru and Hans, for example, which you can check out on the Take channel, for example. So lots of interesting things to follow. But in this video I want to talk about what happened in my tournament. So in the end I finished it off with 5.5 points out of 13 rounds. So I finished with a score of -2, which I'm not that happy about. My goal was to have at least 50% in the end of the event. I did end up having a small rating plus, but since I'm rated about 2420 or 2430 with rapid rating, that's not a big success in my opinion. But of course it could have gone way worse as well. And I did have lots of strong opposition, and I did also manage to beat one of my strong opponents, which is the first game which we're going to have a look at now, which was against Laurent Fressinet, former second of Magnus Carlsen, and very strong grandmaster from France, very experienced. And unfortunately I have to say that this game didn't make it into the live transmission. Somehow there was some error, and I just tried to reconstruct the game, but at some point I just failed to remember what happened. But at least the opening and the middle game I was able to remember. So in this game I started off by playing knight f3 on the first move, and after knight f6, c4, he went for g6, which I didn't prepare for at all. Usually he goes for some d5 setup. And not wanting to run into some preparation, I just went for the very solid b3 and went for this sort of double fianchetto here. He went for d6, and now we have like a sort of king's Indian defense after short castle. And here he went for c5, which is of course one of the ideas for him. Another idea would be to try and get c6 and d5 in connection with knight bd7 and rook e8. But c5 is a good move. I went for d3, knight c6, knight c3. And here Black's main plan is to get some sort of counterplay with f5, which he did by starting with knight e8. The other idea is to get d5 at some point. So for example h6 followed by bishop e6. Trying to get d5 is another option. Of course white will try to avoid that, usually by having his own counterplay with a3, b4. But he went knight e8, I went a3. He stopped my plan with b4 for good with a5, knight d2, knight c7. And here I spent some time and finally went knight d5, which I was quite happy to have spotted this, since it was not that easy to find a constructive plan here, since b4 will not come anytime any soon. And trying to get this knight to go to d5 will take a lot of time. I was also thinking about going knight e1 here, which is a typical idea, to try and get the knight to d5 like this. But it seemed a little bit slower. Like he could even think about going f5 and after knight c2, f4, when my knight on c2 is not coming to d5 after all. So I went knight d5 here. He took, which I thought was very logical, but it turns out it's actually not the best. The computer wanted to go rook b8 here, just avoiding knight b6 when I would win the strong bishop on c8. And he would also have some ideas with b5. But he took on d5, and now the point is c takes d5, and after knight e7 I played b4. This was the whole idea, just trying to get counterplay on the queen side immediately, since if I don't get any play here on the queen side, black will just start attacking on the king side. So b4, now he went b6, which I was very happy to see. I thought he should take here, take on a1, and now take on b4, but still I thought he's definitely under some pressure here. I intended to go queen a4, when I would probably win back this pawn. If queen b6, I thought I could go at least rook c1, and knight c4 will be there sooner or later when I guess he cannot hold on to this pawn any longer. And then the pawn on d6 is also a big weakness. So we went b6, I took, and now we have, again, some sort of King-Indian structure, but the pawn on d6 is very weak, my knight on c4 is very powerful, and black doesn't have any counterplay on the king side yet. Also, the pawn on a5 is a big weakness. He went bishop b7, forcing me to go e4, now bishop a6, and here he decided to take on c4, since otherwise the pawn on a5 would drop. But yeah, after a couple of moves, yeah, I'm strategically already winning here. But it was not that easy, since black still has some counterplay on the king side. He went queen d7, rook b5, happened, rook b8, a4. And here there was another interesting moment. I think that many people would immediately take with the a-pawn, which I also thought about. But here I felt like this a-pawn is pretty annoying. Also, the knight will come to b6, and the pawn on c4 is somewhat of a target. And I decided to take with the c-pawn, which is probably the correct decision as well. And around here, my recollection of the game basically ends. I'm not sure if he played immediately f4 or knight c8. Anyway, later on, a position with f4 arose, and he got some counterplay on the king side, and my advantage at some point, I think, disappeared. He had very good counterplay. Maybe he was even winning at some point, but in the end, in the time trouble, I was able to, get a decisive advantage and then win the game. So this is kind of my best result, at least in the tournament, winning against Fressinet, even though the game, of course, later on was not that smooth as well. But let's jump to the next game. So in the next game, I played against the German Grandmaster Michael Bezold with a rapid rating of around 25-75, and he went for c4, e6, knight f3, d5, g3, and we had one of the very classical lines of this this double fianchetto, where here I went for b6. Of course, black also has many other options like d4 and c5 being the main ones, but I went for b6, trying to get my bishop to b7 as well, and after e3, c5, queen e2. This is one of the main positions of this line. All of the pieces are on the board, and it is an equal game, but a very fighting position, I would say. Knight c6, d3. I think what we played in the opening was very logical until some point here. Knight e1 is what he played. Also quite a common idea in the structure. White usually wants to have some play on the king side with f4, g4, and g5, trying to start an attack, which also happened later in the game, while black will try to get counterplay on the queen side, as I did also with a6 followed by b5. He went for f4, b5, and now g4. I took on c4 with the d-pawn. Apparently b takes c4 was a bit better, but yeah, wasn't easy for me to see why that is. So I guess that at some point I might still have the option to go d4. That could be an idea. But I took here and went knight a5. So my point was just to trade these bishops and to have some pressure on the d3 pawn and on the c4 pawn as well. He went for g5, knight e8, and now, as we can see, white does already have some attacking possibilities on the king side, since he has quite a lot of pieces that could join the attack, while I don't have many defenders for my king. He went bishop c3, I took on g2, and knight d6 was played. Queen e2, rook b8, rook f3, and this is where his attack started on the king side. He wants to go rook h3 followed by queen h5, and here all of a sudden I felt like the position could become quite dangerous already. I took on c4, which is already a mistake. f5 apparently is the best move, which I didn't consider at all during the game. I guess if he takes here, I can maybe take with the bishop. And here my king is probably actually quite safe if I go king h8 and rook g8 next. But I didn't consider that at all. I took on c4, and he took back, which is surprisingly a big mistake. Rook h3 is much better. Again, we both missed that, and just queen h5 is coming on the next move. But he took back immediately, and now I went knight b3. And around here, I felt like I should have a very good counterplay. But after queen c2, I went back rook b7. The engine says that queen b7 works, which was my first idea. But I didn't see what happens after bishop b4, and I still don't see it. So let's just briefly consult the engine. It turns out I can just take here and take cb, and I'm just winning here, which is actually not that hard to find because knight e4 and bishop c5 is coming. So that's what we both totally missed here. I went back rook b7. Now rook h3 was played, knight f5, just protecting the pawn on h7, queen e2, rook b3, queen h5, and here I made after h6, g takes h6, I made a huge mistake. I took on c3, which now the game is just lost for me. If I take back gh6, I'm actually winning because white doesn't have a mating attack here, and the bishop is hanging, and also king h7 followed by rook g8 is coming when white's position will just collapse, actually, since he doesn't have a mate here. But I took back here, and what I missed was, or what we both missed here, he went queen h7, but queen g4 is just a forced mate here. So that was just a blind spot for both of us. If I go with the king here, just rook h8 checkmate, and if king f6, there's queen g5. So that was really poor play from both of us. He went queen h7 check, which is in fact still winning, but also here we totally missed what's happening. After king e4, he went for the repetition, which I also thought like this is the only way to go, but he does in fact have some win here. I think it was, what was it? Queen g2 check, king f5 and e4. Yeah, that was, I mean, not easy to see what, I mean, my king on e4 is of course also very much in danger, but that was not easy to see how to win this. King f5 and king e4, I'm still not sure. Queen f7 he can take here, and then queen e6 maybe, and yeah, my king is a bit weak on e4. So that overall was a pretty poor game, I would say, and I was also quite upset that I wasn't able to win that game because I felt like I should have some advantage at some point, but yeah, that was the second game of the day. So let's have a look at the third one. After the draw in the previous round, I was paired against Sandipan Chanda from India, and yeah, somehow around here, I mean, also starting from the last game, the tournament just started to go wrong again, even though I was able to win the first game. And in this game, I just lost very easily. I got a pretty good position after the opening and then just spent a lot of time and then just collapsed. So let's see what happened. He went for d4, and we got this quite standard line of the Queen's Gambit, this Carlsbad structure, and this was all pretty standard here. I played this very old line with rook e8 followed by knight f8 and then knight g6. More popular is the way to go with something like g6 and knight e6, which is played more often, I would say, nowadays. But I went for this line since I checked it some time ago. He went rook a e1, which I think is a bit unusual. I think rook a to d1 is the main line. Trying to get e4 when with the rook on d1, the pawn on d4 is sometimes better supported after e4. So went rook e1, and now I have h6 because yeah, he has to take here. I also thought about taking here. This is like a typical idea, but I thought in the end I'm protecting everything, just knight h7, and if knight f4, I thought I have bishop f5 and bishop g5 is also coming. So I thought this doesn't work, so he took here, and now he went for queen d2. If he takes on g6 and takes here, I can take on e3 when I'm probably white has to be very careful not to be worse because the pawn on d4 is also very weak now. So he just went queen d2, protecting the pawn, knight f8 back. Probably not necessary, but I just wanted to completely avoid him taking on g6. And now after knight g3 here, I spent like 3 minutes and then went for this very useless move g6, which just makes more weaknesses than it does any good. My first idea was just to go a5, which is probably the best move. Just gaining some space on the queen side and waiting for him what to do, since anyway he cannot go e4 anytime soon because the pawn on d4 will be hanging, and a5 is anyway useful because in some cases I want to gain space on the queen side also with the b pawn. Instead I went g6. Also bishop h4 is very logical right away, just pinning this knight, and again, not easy what white can even do here. But I went g6 to be able to drop back my bishop to g7, but I even saw his response f4, but I still thought it will be fine anyway. But around here, the position already becomes pretty dangerous because just f5 will come and my king can become quite weak. Bishop h4, f5, I took on g3, he took back, and here after g5, yeah, this was kind of the final mistake. I have to take on f5, but it also doesn't look that nice for me. I guess it can still somehow work out here. I will take back on c8. And my king is somewhat safer now, but still I would take white here. I wanted to keep the f-file closed with g5, but now simply e4 is coming, and yeah, his attack is just really strong. And also my bishop on c8 doesn't come out anytime soon, and here the position is just lost. There's nothing for me to do. Queen b4 was the last try, but yeah. Again, my king is too weak and my pieces are not developed well enough, and yeah, I was just getting mated here. There's not much more to say here, so a really unnecessary loss here. G6 was just the start of when things went south. I think it had to do with that I'm just not that experienced in these call split structures. So after the game, I was a bit upset that I didn't go for my main choice, which is the Nimzo, but I was just experimenting here, which didn't go well in the end. But I think I learned something here, which was, yeah, that I mean, I think I knew it also before that G6 is not a good move, but now I really know it. After this game, I will remember not to run into this G6 F4 stuff anymore. So yeah, that was this game. So let's have a look at the final game. So in the final game of the event, I played against the Azerbaijani IM Manafov Vugar with white pieces, and I was already yeah, quite upset with this unnecessary loss against Sandipan before, also with my previous round against Bezold, and at this point I was somehow just trying to finish the tournament. And I think that was also visible in the game. I just didn't play well at all in that game as well. And in the end, I was already kind of hoping for a draw and didn't make any pressure at all with the white pieces. I went for d4 knight f6, and again, I went for this line with e3. Here he went g6, which is quite surprising. And I thought for a bit and went b3, which is also, yeah, just a very, too much of a careful way of playing. I should go c4 when I actually have quite a good version of the Grunfeld after bishop g7. This is kind of the line that black actually usually avoids, because now white will get e4 and black cannot take on c3. But I didn't want to have anything concrete like this, so I just went b3. And here went for this move a5, which is of course an idea, but it's not... yeah, it's not the most mostly played continuation. Usually black goes something like b6, bishop b7, c5 when black is not in any trouble at all. So I went a5, now c4, a4. I could have also just went a4 myself, also an idea as well. Might have been a bit better. I went c4, now a4, and here I took on a4. Instead, there might have been this nice idea with queen c1, which the computer suggested, just avoiding a3. Because if I go something like bishop e2, I was worried that he will go a3, and then he has all of a sudden some active ideas with knight e4, and then something like c5 could come, when, yeah, this looks pretty dangerous for me here. But instead I took on a4, and he went c5. I was expecting bishop d7 to take back here, but c5 in fact is a good move. D takes c5, knight bd7, and I took on d5. Not sure what else I could do here. I was thinking about c6 as well. Wanting him to take. I mean, even this is probably fine for him. Like, I was seeing some lines like this, when in the end I thought this should also be alright for him. And on top of that, I thought even knight c5 is possible here, just again trying to play for some active play. But I took on d5, knight c5, bishop b5, bishop d7, short castle, and already here I realized that I'm definitely not the one who is playing for anything at all here. I just have to be careful not to be significantly worse here. He went bishop b5, rook e1, and yeah, here we reach this endgame where black is a little bit better because the bishop is just way more active than my knights. But fortunately, I was able to hold the game here after a3, rook a4, knight e5. I just traded on c4 and rook b1, and all of a sudden the drawing margin has become way larger. I think if he wants to play for something, he has to keep this bishop. Maybe with bishop a6 here, or before maybe rook a4 was not the most accurate move. Something like rook c8 could also be an idea. But yeah, this happened in the game, and I think nothing much special happened here anymore. He wanted to trade the rooks here, and yeah, after a4, I just went a5, trading these pawns, and in the end, here we agreed for a draw, because yeah, it's just 4 versus 4, which is a dead draw. So yeah, in the end, of course, also this game was not that special, but at least I was able to finish the day with 50%, and yeah, I should just be happy that the tournament has finished with a rating plus, and that's it. And now the Blitz is next. Today is the rest day, and I'm just looking forward to performing better in the blitz. I will definitely do some more preparation today, rechecking my openings. I feel like I did have some issues with the opening, especially also with the white pieces to get anything out special after the opening. And I think with black, I will try to stick more to my openings, especially if you look at the Sandipan game where I had the call spot structure where I'm just not that experienced. I think it's important that I just go back to my main lines, and then I think, or at least I hope, it's gonna be fine. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the recap of the final day of the World Rapid Chess Championship. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And otherwise, I will see you after the Blitz has concluded. So take care, everyone.